Chapter 145, Trouble. In the flower hall, Jiang Xuning sat on the left side, raised her eyes to look at the person sitting on her right, and couldn't help but wonder, it looks like he is also a tall, thin, and tall person, but why does the skull in his stomach grow so fat? She thought that the other party would come to her, but she didn't expect it to be so soon. It's only been 2 days. Xiao Dingfei didn't bring the housekeeper in the way at all, took a sip of tea, squinted his eyes and looked like he was enjoying it, and said with a smile, "Didn't the second girl say that she covered me?" Jiang Xuning snorted, "You remember clearly." Xiao Dingfei held the teacup in both hands, and sighed, "The second girl doesn't know, I have no relatives in Beijing, and I offended my cheap father in Jinluan Hall this morning." Jiang Xuning was very face-saving. "Oh." Xiao Dingfei added fuel and vinegar to talk about the situation in the morning, but he didn't blame himself at all, but danced with his hands, and was a little proud between his words, as if he wanted to do something great. Jiang Xuning knew that this was a bad embryo at all. In the previous life, Xiao Dingfei was very close to herself, and the reason for this was that she was in a hostile relationship with Xiao Shu and Xiao Shi at that time, and she fought fiercely, and the enemy of the enemy was a friend. She also likes Xiao Dingfei. There's no way, a good knife can often stab the Xiao clan to jump feet, and there is no way to take her. Is like Xiao Shu, who is high above and does not change color, and is often so angry that he drinks medicine to reduce fire. As for this life, Jiang Xuning looked at the posture of the other party who said everything and looked at her face, and decided in her heart that the point of looking at the face had not changed, but the other reason was probably because of her relationship with the Yanji Marquis Mansion. The Yanji Marquis Mansion is Xiao Dingfei's foreign family, and Yan Lin is his cousin. Who in the capital doesn't know that she has a good relationship with Yan Lin? Thinking of Yan Lin, Jiang Xuning's mood was a little lower, and when he came back to his senses, he only heard the more he talked about it, the more exaggerated he became, and any emperor was almost grateful to him. Xiao Yuan was so angry that he stomped his feet and cried, "The cows are going to blow to the sky." She suddenly felt a headache, and had to interrupt in time, "Shize, I already know. So how do you want me to cover you?" Xiao Dingfei was blowing to the head, and he couldn't wait to say that even the person surnamed Xia was going to kneel down for himself, and he was suddenly interrupted, and he was still a little unhappy in his heart. But when he raised his eyes and looked, he interrupted that this girl had red lips and white teeth, bright like the sun rising in the morning glow, burning like a hibiscus sprouting green waves, and a thin bend of the eyebrows was softly drawn into people's hearts, and he felt that even the tip of his heart was numb, and the whole body was comfortable. "Where do you remember what is unpleasant?" He leaned in with her as if flattering, "It's nothing, I want to ask for advice." Jiang Xuning raised her eyebrows, "Ask for advice." Xiao Dingfei snapped his fingers, "Look, I have a cheap father, a cheap sister, a cheap brother, and a cheap stepmother. Alas, as soon as a person like me comes back, they will definitely not be happy and want to me. I heard that you were also a famous demon king in Beijing back then, and when you came back, your family was so tormented that the whole family was not at peace. I wanted to learn from you. But when I think about it, the Xiao family is much more powerful than the Zhang mansion, right? You say, should I be a turtle with a shrunken head for a while, save my life first, and then deal with them after stepping on the ground?" Jiang Xuning. Why did she become the demon king of the mixed world? Xiao Dingfei blinked. What's wrong? Jiang Xuning smiled. No. I'm just thinking, you want to be a shrunken turtle, I'm afraid it's useless, right? Xiao Dingfei was puzzled. Have you talked about it? Jiang Xuning looked like a person who came over, and said slowly, "There is a lot of knowledge here. You must know that people are picky and soft persimmons, and you show weakness at the beginning, because everyone thinks you are a bully, and you want to live in peace in the future, who wants to step on you? Think about what kind of life you lived in the heavenly sect in the past, but now that you have returned to the capital and your own home, do you have to live even more aggrieved than when you were in the heavenly sect? Then what are you doing when you come back? Not to mention that you have offended them, what's the use of shrinking back? Xiao Dingfei nodded and said, that makes sense. Jiang Xuning looked at him like this, and didn't believe that he couldn't think of this layer. But isn't it just pretending to be a person? She smiled and said, Dingfei Gongzi has any ambitions in the world. Xiao Dingfei blurted out without thinking, eat the best, drink the most spicy, sleep the most beautiful, live happily, no one wants Lao Tzu to go back to live a hard life. Well, the answer is exactly the same as in the previous life. Jiang Xuning was relieved, with a kind smile, and said, then do you know who hindered you from living a good life? Xiao Dingfei said in his heart, who the hell can he be except for that dog's surname Xie, but think about it again, if he didn't thank him, he wouldn't have today. It's just that you can't say this to Jiang Xuning. He had a deaf expression, who? Jiang Xuning fooled him, it's the Xiao family. Xiao Dingfei got up, what do you say? Jiang Xuning was kind and seductive, do you know the Yanji Ho mansion? Xiao Dingfei said, I know, my foreign family has fallen. Yes, it's all down. Jiang Xuning opened her eyes slightly, remembering that on the day of Yan Lin's birthday, the Xiao sisters and brothers both appeared at the banquet, and what they said and did was even more arrogant than Xiao Yuan's arrogant actions later. There was a little more coldness between his eyebrows. It's just that she didn't leak it, she blinked and laughed again, and continued, I feel sorry for the prince. After 20 years of farewell to the capital, he was occupied by a dove. That Xiao Ye was born as a succession, but he regarded himself as the son of the world, and before his position came down, he was in the capital. Both siblings are very arrogant, usurping your position, spending your money, and enjoying your happiness. If the Ho mansion is still there, and Mrs. Yan has not died of depression, she will definitely stand behind you to support you. Where will it be the turn of the grandfather of the country to reprimand you on the Jinluan Palace? If Mrs. Yan hadn't married him back then, he was afraid that he would not be able to get the position of the grandfather of this country. A bunch of villains who will take revenge. Shize, you are a dignified man, shouldn't you be weak in front of such a group of brutes? Xiao Dingfei thoughtfully, it shouldn't be. Jiang Xuning looked at him, knowing that this was a bad belly, and he was afraid that he didn't have a good idea when he came to him today, but he didn't mind taking advantage of each other, so he said slowly, when you first arrived in the capital, if you don't know how to do something, why don't I teach you? Xiao Dingfei finally smiled brightly, the second girl is really good to me. Around for a long time, that's what he wants. He didn't dare to make trouble on his own, and God knew that the person surnamed Xie would have to cut himself down. But if he had learned the tricks from Jiang Xuning, the person surnamed Xie would not be able to blame him, right? What's more, he pondered along with Jiang Xuning's words, although the person surnamed Xie had never explained to him what he was going to do when he reached the Xiao family, if he really became a turtle with a shrunken head, the surname Xie would not say anything on his lips, and he would be sneering in his heart. At that moment, Jiang Xuning raised his voice and told the little guy who was guarding outside to get away, and after the people walked away, he called Xiao Dingfei to come over and talk for more than half an hour. Xiao Dingfei nodded frequently. At the end of the farewell, he was full of spring breeze, looked at Jiang Xuning and looked at the bodhisattva offered in the temple, and arched his hand and said, the emperor has rewarded me with a lot of things, I'm afraid it's time to send it down, so I will ask someone to carry it to honor the second girl another day. Jiang Xuning looked at him and felt that he was in a good mood, and said politely and watched him go out of the hall. Asterisk. The carriage of the Qiagong mansion has been waiting outside for an unknown amount of time. The housekeeper and the coachman were pale, their necks shrunk in the cold wind of the night, shivering from the cold, and when they saw Xiao Dingfei coming out of Jiang's mansion briskly, they almost gritted their steel teeth without hatred. Xiao Dingfei can be ignored. After he said goodbye to Zhang Xuning, he was as arrogant as if he had won a gold medal for avoiding death. His nostrils were facing the sky, no one looked at him. He jumped into the carriage and said, "What the hell are you doing in a daze?" The butler almost fainted. But after all, he also mixed up some qualifications and positions in a place like Guogong Mansion, but he couldn't bear to be angry, and he thought that Xiao Dingfei would definitely not be able to become a big deal, and when he went back, he told his wife, and when he was happy, he might be greatly rewarded. It was because he suppressed the fire all the way, just waiting to go back to the house to see the grandfather and his wife deal with this madman. The Dingguo Mansion is a wealthy family in Beijing. The mansion occupies half of the street, and the two stone lions outside the vermilion gate nailed with doornails look extremely powerful. Now the door of the house was wide open, but the carriage was going to the side door. Xiao Dingfei saw it when he got out of the car, raised his eyebrows, and didn't even pay attention to the housekeeper's guidance, and walked towards the gate with his feet raised. The housekeeper was startled and stopped in front of Xiao Dingfei. "Child, this gate is not for you to go through." Xiao Dingfei is not a good-natured master. He was a horizontal one, sneered, and kicked this weird old thing with one kick. "Father, your mother. Your little master, I was the son of the emperor himself 20 years ago, and if you scream blindly, Laozi will cut off your head and bring it to the palace." The housekeeper took him all the way back, although he felt that he didn't like to deal with people, but he didn't think he was so arrogant. How could he expect that he would be able to change his face as soon as he got out of the car, and give himself a kick? As soon as there was a pain in the knee, the person was kicked and rolled out. Like a rolling gourd, the ground was covered with dust, and his head hit the steps in front of the main entrance, and he screamed in pain. Xiao Dingfei didn't even take a second look. He had seen a lot of worse and more ruthless things in the heavenly sect, which was not even a fart, and he didn't even bother to move his position, so he stepped on this person's chest and stepped on the steps. The attendants guarding the door were already stunned. Who would dare to stop him? Just buried his head and watched him walk in. At this time, the eunuch who came to deliver the reward in the palace had just left, and the Xiao family and others in the hall were all there, and the food on the table was almost cold. Xiao Yuan's face was extremely ugly. Xiao Ye broke a leg in Tongzhou, and now he is sitting next to him with an injury. Duchess Lu is a few years younger than Xiao Yuan, and now she still looks charming, and she is very well maintained, but her eyebrows are inevitably a little more gloomy. Xiao Shu also deliberately left the palace today. When she heard the news that Xiao Dingfei had returned to Beijing, the Queen Mother had already fainted, and the imperial doctor said that she was too emotional. Sinning Palace said to the outside world that the Queen Mother fainted with joy when she saw Xiao's blood and blood come back. But Xiao Shu knew that it wasn't like that at all. For the entire Xiao family, and even for the royal family, the 4 words Dingfei Shizi are like a magic spell, which can arouse the deepest fear in people's hearts, making people shocked, angry and afraid. When Xiao Dingfei kicked the housekeeper and walked in from the gate, someone ran in front of him to pass the word. Xiao Yuan sneered when he heard this. He was determined to give this unfilial son a dismount and treat him well, so he deliberately put up a shelf, saw people coming in from a distance, sat in his position and didn't move, and only said, "I still know to come back." Xiao Dingfei walked all the way from the gate here, only to feel that Xiao's mansion is really too big, and the rockery pavilions and carved beams and paintings you can see are simply magnificent, too luxurious. It's all my own thinking about it from now on, and I'm so happy. Therefore, when he walked in the door, he also had a sincere smile on his face. "Oh, you are waiting for this son. You are sensible, it is very good, this son is also thinking about just coming back, to set up rules for you, and now I am saving the son to look for you one by one. What the? Xiao Yuan's eyes almost popped out, and he didn't even think of answering anything when he was caught off guard. Xiao Ye can be said to be the most unfair person in his heart. In the past, who in the capital did not respect him as the future prince of Dingguo? His father and mother also told him all the time that after he was crowned, he would be able to ask the Holy Lord for the title of Son of the World. Can kill halfway out of the way to bite the gold. Now he actually told him that his brother, who had saved the emperor and was crowned the Son of the World by the previous emperor, was not dead. As soon as he saw Xiao Dingfei, his eyes turned red, and he scolded, "Who are you who dare to make rules?" Xiao Dingfei noticed that there were people next to him. He couldn't help but turn his head, to the left and to the right. He didn't feel much of the other party's reprimand. After all, when a beggar was beaten and scolded since he was a child, it is not a temperament that will be provoked by 3 or 2 sentences. Just take a look, I think this little boy looks too bad. Although the eyes and eyebrows are good looking, they look mean and vicious when put together, and he has a small family spirit, even if he never wants to admit that his surname Xie is high, but looking at Xiao Ye, he really can't catch up with Xie Wei. Xiao Dingfei couldn't help but shake his head, sighed, and said, "You come here." Xiao Ye was stunned for a moment, not understanding what this person meant. Xiao Shu looked at this person's demeanor, and for some reason, she actually remembered the fearless and arrogant posture when Zhang Xuning openly framed Yu in the palace, and frowned imperceptibly. Xiao Dingfei saw that he couldn't come, and thought that this kid was not easy to deceive, so he walked over, and very naturally raised his foot and stepped on the plan full of jade plates and delicacies in front of him, picked up a chicken leg on the plate with his left hand, took a bite, and said with a smile, "Why are you so nervous?" Xiao Ye was sitting, but he raised his foot and stepped on his table. It's an insult. When he arrived at Xiao Ye since he was a child, where did he receive such a bird spirit? He sneered, and wanted to humiliate him, if it's really an inferior posture learned from the nest of the snake and rat thief of the heavenly sect. But he didn't even have to wait for him to finish speaking. In the bright hall, only a crisp sound of popping could be heard. Xiao Dingfei raised his right hand and slapped him mercilessly, with such force that his head was deflected, and he almost fell to the ground next to him. "Yeah. What are you doing?" 2 alarmed shouts sounded almost at the same time. It was Xiao Yuan and Lu Shi who never expected him to suddenly make a move on Xiao Ye, and finally failed to sit still, suddenly got up and glared at him. Xiao Shu is not much better. How had she ever seen such a bad person? The cruelty of that slap made half of Xiao Ye's face swollen high, and it was shocking to watch. Her eyelids jumped, and she said coldly, "If you don't have a brother when you go home, you can't tolerate siblings like this, and I'm afraid that if you spread it, you'll ruin your morality, right?" Xiao Yuan walked towards Xiao Dingfei with a calm face. Xiao Dingfei glanced at him, looked back and saw that Xiao Ye, who had just been slapped by himself, finally sat up straight again, opened his mouth as if he was about to say something to him, and let out a low laugh in his throat, and slapped him with a backhand. In the hall, Xiao Yuan and the others couldn't believe what they saw. The servants waiting outside the hall were all scared. Xiao Dingfei picked up Xiao Ye, who was about to faint and fall, and turned back to Xiao Yuan with a smile. "I advise you to calm down. You must know that I am an important person brought back by young Master Xie this time, and the holy sect is still counting on me to give me news. If you dare to do something to Lao Tzu will be able to make your 2 continuators become adulterous." Xiao Yuan only felt that there was a rush of blood in his head. He was old. How could he have been stimulated so strongly? Raising his hand to cover his chest, his eyes were full of flowers, and he couldn't stand steadily. His body shook and he almost fell to the ground. Lu Shi was frightened, tears came out, and he rushed up to support Xiao Yuan, crying, "Master, Master, what's wrong with you?" Xiao Yuan finally took a breath and said tremblingly, What do you want to do?" Xiao Dingfei only felt that the family was used to having a peaceful life, and he couldn't stand this toss. It was too disappointing, so he couldn't help but shake his head and sigh, and said coldly, "I don't want to do anything. It's just that you dogs have a good time, and Lao Tzu's life is not good. It's really not that Lao Tzu wants to go against you." He thought to himself, "Your good days are over today, or it won't be easy to kill your old man." Xiao Shu has always been a rare smart person, and he has imagined the situation after Xiao Dingfei returns to Xiao Shi countless times in his mind, but none of them can meet the scene in front of him. People who don't play cards according to common sense find it tricky when they see it. It's just that she was still calm, quietly clenched her fingers, forced herself not to have a seizure, and said with a smile, "The Holy Master values the elder brother. The position of the son of the world is always the elder brother, and the Japanese mansion is also the elder brother. It's the same family, one is prosperous and the other is lost, and my brother really doesn't need to be so jealous of me and my brother. If you stinky dare to call brother again, I won't know how to die when you die." Xiao Dingfei felt all kinds of hypocrisy when he heard the word brother, although she had a good-looking face. From the hair to the corners of her clothes, there was no place that did not reveal the boring fake, and she felt unappetizing at a glance, and couldn't help muttering softly, "Damn, I look naked like this, and I don't want to go to Lao Tzu." Although it was muttering, the sound was not small. Xiao Shu reads poetry and etiquette. How could he ever hear such foul language, and his face has changed greatly in an instant.